Welcome everyone. Tonight we will be having a presentation information only from Fairfax County on Reston Town Center North. And Mark, can you tell me who is in charge of the county presentation?
Yeah, we have folks from the Inova side of the partnership and from
Cool.
Fairfax County. So we have Dave Sittler, I see Tim Sampson, and Dominic from Inova, and I see Eric Inman. I'm not sure if anybody else is here from Fairfax County Public Works, but that's the applicant team.
Okay. And Eric Inman, are you okay to go, or do you need more of your team here, or what do you want to do?
No, I think we can go.
Okay,
You guys are ready.
take it away. Mark, you can give the screen to Eric and he can move forward. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate you coming.
Actually, Tim, who's running the presentation?
Yeah,
slides
I'll
and all
do
that?
it if that works for folks.
You should be able to share.
Okay.
Okay.
So I will hopefully push the right buttons. And
Thanks, Tammy.
is everyone seeing my screen?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
It's a little small.
Let me do
might
that.
hit-
Does that help?
There you
That's
go.
much,
That's
much
good.
better. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah. So I know some of you. My name's Tim Sampson. I'm outside land use counsel for Inova Health System. I've had the privilege of working with them for many years in Fairfax County. And we are, I think, as most of you know, probably all of you know, in a, I call it lowercase p partnership, right? Not literally a partnership, but we have been working very closely with the team from the Fairfax County Department of Public Works for many years on Reston Town Center North. And I got some slides to explain kind of why and kind of where we've been and what we're doing now. And we don't, we hope this is, this is informational. We hope it feels informal and you can ask questions that you need along the way. I could probably talk all night about my experience with this site, and I'm going to try my best to not do that. But if I miss anything, please ask questions and we'll fill in the blanks.
Tim, one question to start.
Yep.
Has the title of the parcels actually been approved, and is that formally done, or are we still in the process of doing that?
There has been no exchange of parcels at this
Okay.
point in time.
Thank you. Appreciate
It's
that.
a great question. It's going to lead right to my very first substantive slide.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. So, and again, for the benefit of everyone, the project team, and this is a lot of these folks have been together for a very long time at Fairfax County. Eric's on the line. Joan Beecham, who I'm sure most of you know, works with Eric. Ryan Wolf is in the county attorney's office and is deeply involved in this. As Mark introduced us, I'm Tim Sampson. Dave Sittler is on the line. He is a development consultant with Inova, and like me, not Inova employees, but we have worked together on Inova projects for decades. Dominic is in the community affairs and government affairs division with Inova. Our landscape architect is Land Design. They've got tremendous experience and track record in Fairfax County and many, many other places. Susan England is on the line with us tonight and will do the presenting. And then our civil team is Urban, who I'm sure you're familiar with as well. Does a ton of work in Reston, very familiar with the site and the surroundings. Pete Crawford's on the line. And our traffic consultant is Will Johnson at Galloway. So this slide, and Tammy, go right to the heart of your question. This is really kind of why we're here. There's a lot to this, but this is the existing parcel ownership. And to just get everybody quickly oriented, I'm sure you all know where this is. Baron Cameron Avenue's at the top. Fountain Drive is on the right-hand side of this block. The town center Parkway is on the left-hand side. Excuse me. to make sure my phone is on stun here. And Bowman Town near the bottom, but at the very bottom is New Dominion Drive. And this, it's about 50 acres. It's 47 something, but round numbers, it's 50 acres of land. And the bulk of it was acquired by Fairfax County from Gulf Reston back in the 70s. And in the later 70s, Inova built the Access Hospital that's there. It's one of the first of its kind, I think, in the country with a standalone emergency room. And then over the ensuing, 10, 15 years from there and through the 80s, Inova acquired the land for value from the county. And the Inova actually built the North County Human Services building that exists on the north side of the site back in the early 80s. And then you're probably familiar, the site was later improved by Inova. There was the Cameron Glen nursing home was there. It was later closed in the 2013, 14, 15, some of that time frame, and demolished a few years after that. The Sunrise assisted living facility, and again, Inova facility is on the lower corner of the site. And of course, as you know, the governmental center for Hunter Mill District is located, the police station located on the other corner of the site. And then, of course, on the southern portion of the site, across Bowman Town, is Reston Library and the Emery Rucker Shelter. And so you can see this diagram depicts the current boundaries of the Inova land in kind of the deeper purple and the county land in gray. And so it doesn't take a lot of explaining to beyond this photo, I think, or this image to tell you why, if to advance the development of the project and to provide for the next generation of uses and development out there, we've got to figure out how to square these property lines up. It's kind of a jumbled mess that has occurred over the long time that Inova and the county have been in joint ownership of the larger parcel. So again, roughly 50 acres, about half owned, slightly more than half is owned by the county, and the rest owned by Inova. This slide, I'm not going to belabor all of this. It was in what we had circulated, but it's our timeline, and you see it goes back to 2010 and brings you forward to 2025. As I said, it's been a long time. We've been working together on this project. And what has taken so long is, among other things, a kind of evolution of recommendations from the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan on how the site should be organized and developed going forward. There was a comprehensive plan amendment approved in 2014 that the project team built forward from. But that kind of got, let's say, we got slowed down by some discussion with the Reston Association DRB on how the site should work. Eventually came out of that process, but headed into the next round of the comprehensive plan amendment in the 2020 timeframe, which, as you all know, resolved in 2023, and we've been working on updating our zoning application since. We did file a zoning application for the site in 2017, in June of 2017, and then that has been kind of on indefinite hold since the winter, spring of 2018. We did, checking our notes, realize we had been to P&Z back in November of 2017 for an informational presentation. So I guess this is kind of our next one of those. Things have changed a lot, so no need to address really what we showed you in 2017. Where we're at though today, and again, kind of racing forward in time, pardon me, and happy to go back and fill in any of the blanks. We have a land plan that now has a lot of backing to it, and as I would think of it. It is a lot and block plan that was approved in concept by the RA-DRB in July of 2021. There was a lot of discussion with the DRB about how the streets should be oriented, what the resulting blocks would look like. And again, a lot of history there, but to spare all the detail, this is where we landed with an approved concept plan by the DRB in 2021. That was then carried forward and is now the same plan that is adopted as part of the comprehensive plan amendment that happened in September of 2023. It is I think it's identified as the concept plan in the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan. So again, same concept, same grid of streets, same street layout, organized around a central green, and having several tree save areas identified where there are substantial, valuable existing trees to be saved on these blocks going forward. At about the same time as the comp plan task force and amendment process was wrapping up in 2023, I'm sure most of you are familiar. There was another kind of parallel task force that Supervisor Alcorn had put together of folks very proximate to the site, and that task force was led by Kate Hanley, and the task of that group was to identify in particular where the public uses that are anticipated for Reston Town Center North would be located. I mean, I think everybody knows it's a substantially public process. And we've been working, we on the Innova side have been working with the county to implement that kind of joint mixed use development plan for a very long time, but with the emphasis on where the public uses are. So we then later in 2024, I'm sure again most of you are familiar, the county acquired the Library Park parcel, which is this piece down here at the very southern portion of the assemblage, which was previously in private ownership, and really a key piece, we think, to the land plan here, because you have the ability then to connect down to New Dominion and straight, more directly straight into Reston Town Center. So again, this plan, I think, says a lot. It says where the streets have been approved to be located by not only the Reston Association DRB, but also just as recommended in the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan. And then you've got the uses that were identified by the other task force for a school site here on Block 1, the Reston Regional Library to occur on Block 3, the Embry-Rucker Shelter to occur on Block 5, and then probably later the Health and Human Service Building relocated from where it is on the north side of the site down here to Block 5 as well in the future. An athletic field on Block 7, a future recreational center on Block 8, and then consistent with the recommendations of the comp plan, the three Innova blocks, as we call them, 2, 4, and 6, would be a mix of residential and non-residential, and consistent with the comp plan, up to 150,000 square feet of non-residential. We certainly anticipate that being having a medical care component. So again, this is kind of what we describe as our kind of baseline document. It kind of says and points to all of the approvals that have kind of led to where we are. And then the next slide depicts what we've done next, right? So we've taken all of the recommendations as we've got them, and we've translated those recommendations into an update to our zoning application. And it is an update to the application that we filed in 2017. And there's a lot of pages to the development plan, but this is the graphic, the kind of key graphic from the development plan to represent the same features that I've just described, on our slide before. So you can see same lot and block layout, same alignment of streets, same areas of tree save on that have been identified for a long time now on blocks 3 and 4. Same concept for central green, and what we're doing with the rezoning or application, our now rezoning resubmission, I should say, right, is just advancing that approved set of design parameters, into the zoning level. And so, what does that mean technically? Technically, the application is a rezoning from PRC and R1 to PRC, and the only reason there is a rezoning component to this is that this little triangular portion, or if you can see my hand there, of Block 7, the lower left portion of Block 7, was never zoned into the PRC, and that line that I'm kind of tracing with my hand on the screen there runs right through the Embry-Rucker Shelter, and I can't explain to you how that happened or that the building is sitting on a split zone site that was a long time ago. It doesn't really matter anymore. But on a going forward basis, of course, we want to get that cleaned up. So again, everything is zoned PRC today. There would be no mention of a rezoning in any of this, except for this little corner of land is zoned R1 still and needs to be brought into the PRC district. The other application that's going along with it is then a development plan for the entirety of, of everything. And what we want to do is, bring all of this land together into one development plan, and establish a baseline for how development of these blocks will occur over the years to come. And there's as there always is, there's a bunch more zoning, kind of as I call it, alphabet soup that I could describe to you about other components of the application. And if there's questions there, I'll be happy to get into detail, but I think that's the best summary I can provide. The key aspects of our zoning application, and you'll hear me call it the zoning application for the sake of coming up with one word when it requires many. Again, it's a little bit of a misnomer in that we're really not zoning much at all, but the zoning applications, what would allow us to do is move to engineering site plan level of development and to build the roads that we have shown here, create the blocks that we have shown here, install the streetscape that we have shown here, and develop the central green as we've depicted it. And I'm going to let Susan speak to the process that yielded the result that we're depicting here in just a minute. But again, more on the technical side, that's what our applications would allow us to do. What is important to say in the same breath, pardon me. What's important to say, I guess in the next breath, is that we are not seeking approval right now for the buildings that would ultimately be built within the blocks. Again, what we're seeking approval for is the ability to build the grid, to create the blocks, and the ability to then have an approved development plan for which we can come back later and amend on a block by block basis with particular building design. Now, there is a lot in this application to describe what would be built in these blocks to come. And what I want to show you next is a slide that has the development tabulations. It's just part of them from our development plan, depicting the development that's proposed for each of those blocks. And I'm not going to get into the weeds of all this, of course, but just point you to this and be able to answer questions and provide additional information. We've identified all the blocks by number, the height of the buildings, the maximum height of the buildings that would go within those blocks, the maximum non-residential gross floor area that would go within those blocks. We've got the range of gross floor area by uses. They've got civic and county uses, retail, which is a catch-all for really non-residential, and then other non-residential as well. And then we get over here, we get into the development, the dwelling units that would be located on the what we call the ANOVA blocks, which are highlighted in yellow here, really only to jump out and differentiate them from the county blocks. You can see, consistent with the comprehensive plan, a total of 1,000 units, and that doesn't include the ADUs and WDUs and the bonus that would go along with that, and certainly that the plan will provide for those consistent with the requirements and recommendations that will apply. Again, not going to belabor the details of this, but wanted to give a sense that it's not that we're showing and describing nothing for within these blocks. We're describing a lot of what will happen there down the road. We're just not at a place to show you a picture of what the building would actually look like. Another comment to that effect is that with our proffers will guide development within the blocks as well, right? So just to pick on block 4 for the sake of picking on a block, the proffers will say, for instance, that you can't have access to a garage off of the Library Street frontage of this, because we know that that's not appropriate across from the central green. The proffers will describe that ground floor uses along Library Street on this block will be activated because we want that street presence there. The proffers will describe for all these blocks that if parking is anything other than below ground where you can't see it, it's going to be screened so you can't see it and dealt with in an architectural way. There'll be proffers that you're very used to seeing in other parts of Reston too, governing the quality of the design that will come and the materials that will come. There will be the proffers will commit to green building certifications consistent with proffers that you're used to seeing for other buildings. So again, the point is, the package that we're proposing now is while it mostly I say horizontal plan with the vertical components of this to come later, but with our proposal right now, we have all kinds of detail on what you can expect to see when those later applications come. And I think the other important thing I want to say is again, still in the technical part of the presentation before I turn it over to the folks who have done the hard work of creating such a great place. We have been very mindful that we want to have our plan meet all of the relevant metrics, I'll say, for the entire development with what we're providing at this time. And let me explain what I mean by that. As you all know, there is a urban parks requirement for such development as this. Well, that parks requirement is based on a future program, and so we have anticipated the maximum future program that those development tabulations I showed will allow, and created a park requirement, urban park requirement based on that maximization of the development plan. And then we have met that requirement on the plan that you see in front of you. We have done that also with publicly accessible open space. We've done that with the tree canopy requirements. So said differently, all of those metrics for open space, for tree canopy, for park are met for the entirety of the site with what you see on the plan, because we have these large areas of central green. We have this area over here of the Edgewater Pond area that would remain in tree cover. We have the dedicated tree safe areas, and we have the robust streetscape areas that we're proposing. And that is not to say that that don't intend to have more open space on these blocks when they develop. They absolutely will. We will just again pick on block 2 this time. Block 2 is not going to be a building from edge of tan space to edge of tan space, right? That's the canvas, the back of streetscape. That's the canvas on which that block will a building or set of buildings will be designed in keeping with all the parameters that I've described here. And whatever open space, pocket park is yielded there, or open spaces or anything else, is going to be in addition to the requirements for the entire site. Like, again, because all of the minimum requirements are met with what you see before you. And again, I think that's important because we don't want to be in a place where we're telling you, hey, just approve our plan and believe us that someday you're going to like what comes next, right? What we want to be saying to you is we have provided enough in the plan we have before you that's worthy of approval because we meet all of the minimum metrics, and that when you then see the plans in the future for the buildings on, again, whatever block we want to pick on, those plans will be reviewed in the context of a set of proffers that describes very clearly how they must be developed and in a way that everyone is used to seeing in Reston, and whatever additional space in there is provided is going to be above and beyond the minimum provided. So I'm going to now turn the presentation over to Susan from Land Design and let her speak to again the context kind of from a design perspective, how we got where we got, and then explain kind of on a going forward basis, how we brought this design to the central green into the mix, and explore a bit more of the details of the application. So Susan, please take it from here.
Thank you, Tim. Again, my name is Susan England. I'm a landscape architect with Land Design. I am also joined this evening by my colleague Stephanie Pankowicz.
Good
And just
evening.
and we just wanted to share a little bit more about the details. As Tim was saying, he provided great overview of kind of the overall plan and a lot of the details of the overall. And we wanted to dive specifically more into the Central Green itself, as that is kind of the heart of the development. So with that, Tim, if you could go to the next slide, please. So we began this process, kind of the restart of this process after we had that 2023 or 2021 plan. And then as Tim described, the 2023 task force that took a look at the uses on the county blocks. Having those uses nailed down was really beneficial to then taking the next step with the Central Green in particular, as it is ringed on all sides by different blocks. So understanding what those adjacent uses are really helped us think more clearly about how to program the park space itself and what those relationships could be. So almost a year ago tomorrow, we kind of restarted this Central Green design process with a community town hall. This was fully open to the public and really brought everyone up to speed who was familiar with aspects of the project, brought them up to speed with the latest. And anybody new to the process kind of introduced the project to them. At the same time, that kicked off a community survey that we launched. We wanted to hear from members of the community at large about their preferences and priorities for this space. At this time, we did not have any kind of design, so it wasn't asking for, do you like this or that, but really trying to understand from a broad range of potential park elements, park uses, etc. What was the vision for the space? What was in line with what their hopes for the space, what it could be? So we had that survey open from June 18th through July 10th. And then after that, closing that survey, we did an analysis, which we'll get to in a more detail in a moment, did an analysis of the results of the survey, took a look at key takeaways, what those takeaways led to recommendations, and started to develop some concept ideas that in September gathered a group of county stakeholders, members of RA were present as well, and really tested out some of these ideas with the stakeholder group. We used a number of engagement exercises to really drill into those ideas and really test those preferences and priorities of this is what we heard from the community, this is how it might take a physical form, what really works, put that up against the actual conditions of the site. For example, knowing that there's a lot of topography across the site from east to west. And so how do all of these different hopes and dreams, so to speak, preferences and priorities fit into a physical form? And how do we, start to really nail those down? So that was September of last year. And then with the input gathered from that work session, that really launched us into refining the concept and leading us to where we are today. So with that, Tim, if you can go to the next slide. This was an online survey that we held and got great participation. We had 383 participants. It was advertised through county website, supervisors, newsletter, and so forth. And all of the results kind of boil down to these 4 key takeaways. What we learned from the community was that respite and access to the outdoors was very important. It related to sentiments, including, whether it was personal priorities or park priorities, park elements, and health considerations. So kind of across all the different topics and different ways that we asked these questions, respite and access to the outdoors was ranked very highly. Similarly, trees and shade were also very important. And along with that, when we asked about, are you interested in a formal landscape or a naturalized landscape, sort of a traditionally landscaped park was what people had in mind or gravitated to most, as opposed to a more naturalistic approach. We also found that social activities were ranked very high for the park. So thinking about events or gatherings that could happen in the park. In particular, excuse me, there was an emphasis on large-scale organized events as opposed to smaller social interactions that might be a small group or, a person with their friends out there. While those were desirable, as I said, there was an emphasis on sort of the large organized events or a desire for those large organized events. Might seem contrary to that, but we also heard that quiet spaces were important for people. Back to that idea of finding respite in the urban environment, having spaces where they could still have smaller social activities or individual time to have that respite. So that kind of told us that we needed to think about the space as a flexible park that could hold both the large scale formalized or organized events as well as these smaller spaces carved out as well. Next slide. We then took those key takeaways and thought, okay, well, how do these different ideas take a physical form? How can we make sure that the design of the park embodies what we heard from the community and then what we heard from the stakeholder group as well? So this chart starts to look at, on the left, a list of recommendations about how those physical forms could take shape. And then across the right, we wanted to make sure that these all continue to serve those key takeaways. So you can see where, for example, the first one, provide areas of lush landscaping. That's something that we can clearly design into the space, and that would help support the key takeaways of providing trees and shade, as well as respite and access to the outdoors. Whereas, looking down to the middle, that provide a range of seating options that can get both to the respite and access to the outdoors of providing a place for someone to sit and enjoy the outdoors, as well as providing opportunities to create community connections. So if we think about organizing seating or benches into circle or opposing sides so that people can have those conversations, or movable furniture so people can arrange the spaces for how they need to use it. Next slide, Tim. So all of that information helped drive us to this plan that you see here. At the center of it is the key feature of the open lawn and plaza space that face towards Block 3, the library site. As I mentioned, topography is a key consideration on the site. There's over 20 feet of grade change from one side to the other. And I think it's well over that. And so taking advantage of that slope and thinking about the need to provide those spaces for larger events and organized events, this sets us up for a great opportunity to have seating in the lawn space and presentation or a concert or a stage or something happening on the plaza space. By not doing something like a formalized amphitheater and just having the open lawn space, that gets back to the flexibility of the use, that this can be used for the everyday event, the everyday condition, as well as the larger events. We've got circulation throughout the park, and so one of the key organizing pathways is the loop around that central lawn and the plaza space, as well as that north-south circulation access to help tie everything together. We wanted to make sure that the park was fully accessible, so we've graded it so that you can access all of the different areas with a wheelchair. We do have some steps in some areas for quick access or cut-throughs, but these broad sweeping curves allow for your primary circulation to be accessible. The central lawn space and that main plaza are kind of the centerpieces that help organize additional spaces around the edges. So on the right-hand side at the upper end of the park space, we've got overlook moments and smaller seating areas where you can have those smaller conversations or smaller social gatherings. Those are enveloped by planted areas to help create that respite and that light separation from the streets. Along the northern edge, adjacent to Block 1, which is the future school site, is a large playground space that is opens directly up to a smaller lawn space to the east. You can imagine children running back and forth between the playground and the lawn area to have that additional runaround space. Parents might gather on the lawn while kids are playing in the playground. And that smaller lawn space could also be used for smaller event space as well. In the upper left-hand corner, which northwest corner is bioretention. That's the lowest point of the site. And so utilizing that both to capture the runoff from the park, but also as one more element of sort of a naturalized or garden-esque feel and separation of the playground from the streets to give a little bit of buffer there. We've worked to include some landscape around the edges and between key uses as a means of buffer and as a means of providing that landscape that the community was interested in. We'll also note in between that main plaza space and Block 3, the library site, we are proposing a potential tabletop or raised crossing condition there to help facilitate access between the two sites. Of course, that will be dependent on having that street be accepted as a private street or otherwise getting approval from DOT. Across the bottom are some character images that we believe are reflective of the level of activity and quality of materials and types of park elements that could happen in the central green.
And Susan, if I could just interject too, while we have this on screen, just so this in the development plan and the plan that was submitted to the county, if you look on page L-3.00, for those of you who might want to look at it later, there's a tabulation and calculation for the size of this park, and precisely we've calculated it at 3.48, so it's nearly 3.5 acres. I mean, we're if you round, it's 3.5, but in the actual formal submission, we have it noted as 3.48.
Thank you for pointing that out. I'll also note, just in terms of access, there would be crosswalks at the corners. There's on-street parking on all 4 sides to further help facilitate access and use of the park. Tim, if you want to go to the next slide, we've got just sort of a study level or schematic level perspective view. This
Hey,
is
Susan.
from,
Dave said,
yes.
sorry to interrupt. One other thing I just thought that everybody should be aware. Can you go back one slide? Everybody can pick this up later, but there is a proposed small building, hasn't been
Oh,
designed
yes,
yet,
thank you.
to be able to provide restrooms.
Mhm.
And the goal is to have Wi-Fi and enough other services so that if you have a concert stage, that there's electric and water and all those things there.
Thank you, Dave. And in this view, that restroom building is kind of hidden behind the trees, but that white spot there between the playground and the lawn area. So this starts to give you a little bit of idea of scale with a couple cars and people placed, just to help understand the size that Stephanie was mentioning. We've got about 3.5 acres. Taking a look at the circulation throughout the site, as Tim noted earlier, being able to connect Library Street all the way down through the newly acquired library parcel is a great benefit to connect to Reston Town Center. We do see Library Street being the center spine to help move people and bicycles through the development, with the added bonus of they get to go right by the central green every time. The east-west connections are going to be a little secondary in nature, but provide those connections as well between the different blocks. And as I mentioned, the potential tabletop condition between the park and the library. Here are just a couple of typical street sections, just to give you an idea. We are proposing your typical building zone, sidewalk zones, landscape amenity panels. And as you can see here on Library Street, this is taken at the northern end, sort of typical of Library Street, with the on-street parking, as I mentioned, and the pedestrian step-off zones associated with those. The bottom street A is, if you're looking with the future school site, on the left-hand side of this section, and then on the right-hand side, just opening up to the central green. And then here, a couple more. The top section is Cameron Glen, looking at sort of a typical east-west connection, again with those on-street parking and step-off zones at the landscape amenity panel. And then the bottom section is Street C at the library, just north of that tabletop condition that I mentioned. So in that case, the library is on the left-hand side and opening up to the central green on the right. And with that, I will let Tim take it away to go over the phasing.
Thank you, Susan. And we're getting to the end here, so thanks everyone for hanging with us. I thought it was useful to show this again, a bit more technical again, but obviously, I think everyone knows that all of this will not happen at once. And so it's a fair question, I think, for us to anticipate how to describe our proposal for how it will happen over time. And we can't say for certainty the order of events. We don't, there's too many existing uses going on out there. There's too much that requires one thing to do another, right? You can't, develop block one until you move that building out of the way, the existing Health and Human Services building. What we think is, and what we're planning for right now, and what you'll probably hear us say a lot, is that we think the first phase is going to be block 3, because that's where the library goes. The county is ahead of, interior block development, we'll say, with the library beyond what Inova is on any of the blocks, or the county is on the other blocks. So it is our anticipation that that will happen first, block 3. But I've been doing this for too long to promise in a set of proffers an order of block development on something of this scale. As soon as we do, we'll get it wrong, and you'll just be having to put it all back together. So what we do instead on these projects of this scale is identify how the project would be phased if each of the blocks happened to be the first to develop. And that's what these graphics that are included in the development plan are intended to depict. And again, I think one set of graphics is worth easily 1,000 words, I'm sure, in trying to do that. So again, the idea is, if block 1 somehow were the first, what roads would go with it, and what other infrastructure would go with it? Again, highly unlikely that block 1 goes first, because there's an existing building there, and the use in that building has to be put someplace before you could tear it down and build block 1. But again, in the thinking of never say never, this is how we've got this organized. The critical piece that I want to point out is, in every one of these scenarios, right, and we're looking at all of the blocks, I should say, right north of Bowmantown Drive, because these blocks aren't dependent on others. But in every one of the scenarios north of Bowmantown Drive, what you'll notice is the central green happens in the first phase. And so that's our commitment. Again, kind of like the open space and urban parks. We don't want to be telling you, just wait. It'll come one of these days. What we're saying is the no matter what goes first, the central green block will come along with it. What you see is, in this depiction too, it's not the central green that Susan just described in detail. It's kind of it's a grassy block, and that's what it would be initially, is our proposal. And the reason for that is that while we're building, while the county's building the library, while the county's building, a relocated Embry Rucker shelter, while perhaps, again, not being able to guess at what the phasing is going to be, while Inova may be building a building over here, we don't want to be tearing up, this wonderful new park that we just did. So but we're not saying all that's coming last. We want to get into the new construction a bit to create a critical mass around that before implementing the improvements within it. But again, importantly, from the get-go, the block of the park gets created, and it's available as a large open space, from the beginning. So I think, if I'm right, yeah, that's the end of our presentation. Back to this slide again, and be glad to do my best to address questions or direct them if I can't.
Lynn had her hand up. Tim, I know you can't really see everything.
Yeah, I don't know what the protocol is here. If Tammy, do you direct the questions, or should I try to?
Tammy, I think you're on
Sorry.
mute.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, I will start with questions, and committee members have their hands up already. So if you're ready, we're ready. David and Sue, what is your question?
There we go.
For the public green, what is the yellow star representing, or asterisk?
That's a good question. That is representing an opportunity to locate public art, and we've described it as a potential interpretive feature. But we recognize the expectation that the project will have a public art component to it, and we have not yet engaged that conversation with the art group, but that is definitely on our list. We know it's out there, and this is a placeholder for that idea. And again, if anyone on the development team, Eric or Susan, or if I'm saying that wrong, please correct me. Make sure we're communicating that right.
Yes, I noticed in your application that you said you were coordinating with Reston Art, and it would likely be on the public green, which is a perfect spot for it. So thank you for starting to think about that very early on in this process. Did you also mention an amphitheater or that type of performance area, and where would that be? Or did I miss that?
No, I think what Susan mentioned amphitheater, but I think she was mentioning it to say we directed something more to a more kind of functionally flexible space than an amphitheater might yield. And so that instead of having a fixed kind of amphitheater component to it, recognizing a very important use of the green could be performances or large gatherings. The idea is that a stage could be set up in this location, or even, given the ability to use the road if we're able to do that, or the exterior space in front of the library somewhere in this location. And then for, a smaller event that may be populated by folks that are, in this plaza area. For a larger event, it could include, way in back into the lawn. And then as David mentioned, there's opportunity to kind of, have that stage component move around kind of in this vicinity. But we think that with doing that as opposed to kind of formal amphitheater, then allows the space to be, programmed for different things at other times. And as Susan mentioned, and you saw on the kind of the bird's eye view, the change in topography across the site really lends itself to that dynamic as well, because you can, if you had a stage here, folks could sit with a lawn chair on the lawn, and as you go back, you're getting higher and higher and able to look over the heads of people in front of you.
Right. I like your more informal idea of not, setting a specific area for a formal amphitheater, but rather making it more informal. One thing you might want to consider is should the performance or informal event, whether it be singer or actor or reader or whatever, you always want the sun to be in the performer's eye, not in the eyes of the audience. And when I see that green area where you have the pointer right now, if people are seated on the lawn chairs or blankets or whatever, they would be looking, if it's toward that sort of yellow star area, directly into the west sun, and often events are in the late afternoon or early evening, and so you never want the sun in the eye of the audience. So just think about that as you determine where to orient that informal amphitheater or performance space.
That's a great
Thank you.
observation. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, the topography is such that it is very east to west, with the library being
Sure, I
much
see
lower.
that. I see
But
that.
there is opportunity, and part of why we have the swoop in that central north-south walkway is by bending that plaza out a little bit, it gives us an opportunity to get a little bit more of a north-south orientation to kind of cheat that a little bit to help with
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
David, did you have anything?
No, I'm good for right now.
Okay, Lynn.
I did have.
Oh, go, Suze. I'm
No,
sorry.
I had one other thing, but
Sure.
I'd like to hear other people, and then I'd like to save mine for last.
Sure. Lynn?
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to extend my appreciation to this team for bringing this forward as was proposed in the master plan and the comprehensive plan redo. That was approved by the Board of Supervisors less than 2 years ago. I am a little confused by one of the comments that was made that you would come back with kind of piece by piece modifications for the areas surrounding the different blocks surrounding the green space. And it was my understanding that we wanted to get to approval of the total plan. So we want to know what's going into these blocks around the central green. So is that
So, yeah, so
okay? So that
in,
is
in this application, what
right.
you'll see is, well, first of all, before let me make sure I'm not confusing anything. This page right here is not in our application, right? But it just is a summary page with a lot of information. But what our application shows, this page is in our application. And then in
Right.
our development tabulations and in our proffers, and there's a lot, and I'm happy to, you know,
We
do
don't need
whatever
to
we
go
can
through
to make
this.
this clear for folks. With the package together,
Mhm.
what you're going to have is, right, an approval package with a plan and set of proffers that says the blocks are going to lay out like this, and then block 1 is planned to have a school site, and block 3 is planned so
Okay.
that you're aware of those things, just like this is depicting.
Right.
And importantly, right, this is why, again, this is the very boring part, I know, of this all these conversations, but
Well, I
the
think Commissioner Carter and I will agree that it is not boring.
okay. It is the part I work on, so I guess I shouldn't,
Okay.
shoot myself in the foot. But importantly, right, I think that the parameters of what we are committing to and limiting the ability to build in these spaces is set forth in the tabulations and the proffers. And so that what you will know is that, again, I'm just going to pick on, block 4. Block
Okay.
4 is going to be approved for a residential building with a certain maximum number of units that it can have in it. And it can also have some non-residential space in it. And it's going to be limited to a certain height. And it's going to be limited to, working within the parameters of the back of streetscape, right? It has to be within these bounds. It has to save this area of trees. And then again, there's going to be a bunch of proffers that describe, its environmental attributes. It's going to be LEED certified. It's going to have some of those design features that I went through earlier about what's going on the ground floor and that sort of thing. So I think that you're going to have a lot of information on what to expect for these blocks. And what I meant when I'm talking about, coming back later is that the applications that we have now don't show you a picture of what that building it looks
Right.
like.
Right.
And so
Okay.
what we'll come back later and show you the picture. So it will be an amendment to this application, just focused on this block, again, just making an example, that will then show you a picture. And what I hope to do someday is show you a picture of the building that is going to be on this block and remind you of all the things I told you today, right? That we're depicting at that time, right? And so that there's not going to be any mysteries. And at that time, you're going to, the land plan will translate into a building coming out of it, and you're going to comment on, well, I'd like it better if the windows were this or that or the other, but we'll have already had a conversation about, kind of what the use is, how tall the building is, and all those sorts of things.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that the desire was for this entire Reston Town Center North, for these parcels, so that we would know what the plan in its entirety was. So, the coming back and getting approvals for each of the different blocks, I think is what's giving me a little consternation. But that's my thing. So,
Yeah,
um,
and look, I don't, but before we let it go, because I don't, it's a fair question, right? And I want to make sure we address as well as we can. And you've probably heard me try several times to say, like, I'm going to give you as much information as I can.
Right.
But let me answer a slightly different question that you're not asking, but I'm kind of reading between the lines, like, why aren't you showing me the building, right? And the answer to why we can't show you the building right now is really embedded in, let me go back to this slide, right? Because for 15 years, we've been trying to get to this. And if we had designed, it cost millions of dollars to design those buildings. And if we had designed buildings back in 2014 timeframe, based on that 2014 plan that was in the comp plan, we'd have wasted a lot of time and money doing that. And again, this isn't a block right here that the county owns right now, right? And this is not even not it owns, it's not even, it's partly owned by the county and partly owned by Nova. We need to get the everybody in agreement that we've got a plan here that is the right land plan to go forward with, so that we can then do the land swap that we need to do to get this block in county ownership and this block in county, and then proceed from there. And so we're trying to sell everyone as much as we can about what they can expect to happen in those blocks in the future, but we're just simply not in a place to spend millions of dollars until designing buildings until we know that we've got a parcel of land to design a building on. If there are,
And don't get me wrong, I'm not
Okay.
talking about the building design.
Okay.
I'm just talking about what the units are, the FAR, those
Mhm.
types of requirements, that's all.
and that's great, and because I think that we'll be able to answer those questions. And I don't mean to try to
Mhm.
answer them right now, Lynn, and we'll
Thank
take
you.
them up with you as ever you need them, but we can demonstrate through these tabulations how big the building would be, or the maximum size, right? And somewhere within that maximum envelope, someday we will come back with a plan, and I'll say, look, we told you it was going to be 135 feet, it's 134 feet, so we're good,
Okay.
and off we go. So I'm hoping.
Appreciate that, Tim. Thank
Yep,
you.
and please be in touch if you get into this and have questions about how we intend for all that to work, because
Okay.
I think we can work with it through
Wi-
that.
Will do, will do. I have a couple more questions. I just wanted to, I think Susan, when you were talking about the central green, and you were showing some of the results from the surveys that you all did, and you were talking about the respite. I think you meant respite. You said respite in urban settings, and there's a big difference from. So respite from urban settings versus respite in urban settings is two different things. And I did note that the survey did specifically state respite from urban settings. So we just want to make sure that people are getting relief from that urban setting.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the other thing, getting back to the central green, the bioretention area, I'm just wondering if that is being considered as open space, because it's really not usable unless people are able to go into the bioretention area.
We have walkways surrounding it and overlooks into it, but not access down in the bottom of it. But it
So
is
is-
considered open space.
Okay. So bioretention areas, I mean, is that going to be fenced off where children don't go play in it, or is it an
No.
attractive nuisance?
The intent is that it would be fully landscaped with appropriate plants that can handle the different water conditions that would happen there. And we would propose a fence around the playground, not around the bioretention facility. We want the bioretention facility to feel as much a part of the normal landscape as any of the other landscaped areas, but having a fence around the playground, that way children aren't running into the bioretention, they're not running out into the street or other things.
And sorry, I don't know that I heard how much, what percentage of the acreage is the bioretention area of the 3.48 acres?
I don't know that we have that calculation on hand, but that's something that
Okay.
we could find out and send to you.
Okay. And the last thing, I did want to compliment you on the attempts at green building certifications. So thank you for that. And that's the end of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Jared, please.
Great. Well, thank you both. Thank you all for the presentation. It's been very helpful. My question, Tim, because you had said really your goal is to get to the sort of block and street plan at this point. My question is on the street section and bike lanes. There was the one with the colored arrows. And I guess one of the questions I have, there it is. So right now, my understanding is that current Cameron Glen that comes across and then down, there is a bike lane there now currently, I believe, and it looks like you've moved sort of all of the bike lanes to the perimeter of the entire block site. Have you given any thought in how to get bike lanes through and to the central green?
Susan, I don't know if you want to, the thought is that within the site, and as you point out, the bike lanes are on the periphery of the site.
Yeah.
The idea is that within the site, there would be sharrows and the bikes would share the lanes with traffic. And we
Okay.
would have the opportunity then for on-street parking and, trying to keep the section there as narrow as we can.
Yeah, so and that's what I was kind of wondering. So then, because if I go then back to the street section, it was sort of always just two-way traffic, parking, it looks like on the side. What are you anticipating then the speed to be? And I'm curious about the intersections. Would just be stop signs? Would you signal?
Yeah, good question. And so Dave, help me out if I
Yeah.
get this wrong. But
So-
what we anticipate is the potential for additional signals here and here on Fountain Drive.
Correct.
And those are Bowman Town, right? Those signals at those locations are already proffered as part of the spectrum development. And so we're thinking like we're not really adding a signal that isn't already kind of in the works, if you will. And it's just going to be kind of a matter of, I think what is the level of development on either side of Fountain Drive that ultimately triggers the need for it. And then otherwise there would be stop controlled intersections where and I suspect, I don't know, we have not gotten into, Dave, that I recall, whether, where there might be a four-way stop. I think the stop controls would be on the east-west streets, and that Library Street would presumably not be stop controlled through the interior of the site. Obviously, it would.
Yeah, and all those are subject to VDOT. What the other thing I think we've done too is you can see that while there is a grid of streets, in some cases it's disjointed, and that's specific so that it attempts to slow traffic down.
Right.
It makes somebody coming from Street A by the school have to make a right and then a left on Street D. Cameron Glen and Library are the two major through streets. They're all considered local streets. There will be stop control at most of the intersections, and they'll be posted more than likely at 25 miles an hour.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to balance the whole bike traffic, car traffic. And I guess the last thing is, in looking at the one chart that you said that isn't the exciting chart, but it talks about up to 1,000 dwelling units on here. So even like from a street streetscape perspective, I guess one of the things we've looked at some other projects on the planning and zoning where there's just a little more separation between building and street to create some more green space. And I guess that's just one of the, I don't want these to get overly tight. And I know you're not showing us the buildings may be set back, but I think that's a general concern I would have, being narrow streets planned this way. If you put 100-unit dwelling units in there, you're going to start needing loading docks. You're going to start needing maybe some larger traffic that are going to come in these mixed use. And I'm assuming you've thought the streets are wide enough with the design, but I think it's something we would want to look at further on, I guess.
Yeah, good question. I think, and we have thought about it and tried to. These arrows along the blocks here are depicting locations where those sorts of access points could occur, because we're trying to think, as you see, we would not have them on Library Street, as I mentioned before, at least on Library Street adjacent to the Central Green, for sure.
Yeah, I guess, and then what I'll point out is previous things have led to considerations around loading, drop off, mixed use with retail, then also leads to delivery drivers picking the Uber drivers, and all of that creates congestion on what become maybe your two streets at Cameron Glen and Street D leading into the site. So just potential congestion if the streets section isn't a little wider to accommodate for some of those people who love to stop with their flashers on and not let people by.
Yeah, we definitely understand that. After dealing though with FCDOT for many years, they're focused on narrowing the streets, especially at the intersections, to reduce the amount of distance between corners, which is one of the reasons we have so much on-street parking. Not all this on-street parking will eventually get built because of access points and things like that. Some of it may end up being a lay-by. For example, if we were to have a medical office building that needed lay-by, for example. So again, we're trying to narrow the streets, one, to keep the speed down, because we see this as a highly pedestrian neighborhood, and two is to provide a streetscape section that allows our buildings to provide a street wall and still meet whatever we need to meet for the fire department requirements for those buildings.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think that it's good. It's like the as I'm sure, Jared, it's like it's like the trying to find the Goldilocks solution on this, right? You don't want it too wide, you don't want it too narrow, so it's like we'll work through all of that with everybody to make sure we get it as close as we can. I think as Dave said, what I would anticipate is that we commit that some of the street parking is designated for short-term, 15-minute only type of drop-off space and all that. But you're exactly right. You got to figure out how to account for all that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Our next person is Chris, please.
Great. Thank you, Tammy. I just wanted to add my appreciation to the entire team. I was a member of that Reston Town Center North Task Force, and it is delightful to see the work that we did come to life in this way. So appreciate that. I also live at the Paramount, so I look directly down onto this space, and it's we look forward over the next 15, 20 plus years to watch this expand and develop. So I very much appreciate the work here. Just a couple of things I wanted to ask about. The Library Street extension down between blocks 7 and 8, right there. That's there are a fair number of trees there right now behind the library to the south side of the library. And you just would encourage, as we can, as much tree save area there as is feasible given a major connector street and the two uses in a rec center and a ball field in block 7 and block 8. And then will it be a stop, a stop sign, or will it be a light that crosses New Dominion at that Library Street?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
We don't
So,
know it, but we're not thinking it's a full intersection, right, Dave, at this point?
right now, we don't see it as a full intersection. We don't think VDOT's going to permit a full intersection because of the turn lanes required.
Okay, got it. That's helpful. And then the only other caution, and I know that this is a bit out of the territory of this plan, but I also looked directly down on the new Whole Foods, and there's a fair amount of concern that the traffic that will be added to this area because of the Whole Foods being at that corner. Would just encourage you to think about that as we're thinking about, you know, the traffic, the parking, the lights that are in short proximity to that. It is not very far from that exit from the Whole Foods to the proposed light at Barron Cameron. So that can potentially be a challenge. I don't know that there's anything we can do about that, but just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Next, Jeremy Mack, please.
Thanks. First off, thank you for putting all this together. It's very straightforward and informative. I think as far as, you know, the next time this gets presented to us, a few things that I would be looking for, you know, in a formal presentation would be more information about the proffers that would go with it. You know, I'd be curious to know if you'd be looking at doing, you know, maybe some pedestrian-only streets through some of these blocks. I mean, if you look at the scale of the surrounding blocks and you see, you know, the Harris Teeter and the huge parking lot that goes outside of it, and that's about the size of one of the larger blocks in this proposed development. Or, you know, in the bottom left corner where you've got, you know, a dozen apartment buildings with parking in between them. It's pretty easy to imagine, you know, block 2, block 6, having multiple buildings with some type of um, pedestrian alley or mew of sorts running through it. And so things like that would be interesting to know in the proffer if you're looking at doing those things in the future.
Let me respond to that. So I do
Sure.
believe the blocks ultimately will get broken up in some way based on when the buildings are designed.
Mhm.
We will, as part of this application, I don't think we can commit to that because
Okay.
we don't know what's going to be on a block. You know, for example, block 2 has 2 options. It has a townhouse option, has a multifamily option. In either case, they're going to be totally different from a layout standpoint. Block 4 may have multiple buildings, may have a residential building and may have a medical building. So while I do see that, because they're going to be need not only for pedestrian, but potentially cross alleys for loading and things like that and parking garage access. But
Okay.
I just think it's going to be difficult in this application at this stage to be able to provide that information.
Okay. All right. Sure. I wasn't sure how nailed down the different uses would be and how detailed you'd get into the proffers at that point in time. But yeah, apart from that, I really like what I see. I like the fact that you've taken the approach of provide the requirements up front instead of at the very end. That's definitely encouraging. I was really impressed with taking the survey on what the community was looking for in a green space, and I think the team did a great job of finding a lot of different scales of spaces in the green area, so that if somebody is looking for respite, they can choose one of the smaller, more intimate spaces that are kind of nestled among the medium-sized spaces that are protected from the streets. So I kudos for getting that mix of sometimes competing priorities to work out pretty well. And then, yeah, as far as the traffic, I do think it's pretty clear that you're setting something up that provides the necessary circulation, but also kind of discourages people from using it as a shortcut, from one side of the development to another. So, thank you for being mindful of that.
Thank you.
That's all I've
And
got.
the proffers, if you're looking for the proffers now, there are draft proffers, that we can circulate. They're posted on the county's site. So if there's anything
Okay.
more there you want.
Yep. No,
Um,
I just I figure for a finalized proposal, it'd be good to know what proffers you have for it. So thanks.
Okay, next up, Michelle.
Hi, guys. Thank you very much. I want to start with proffers. Some of the proffers are worded in a way that are quite concerning. So specifically, you've said multiple times tonight that you'll be coming back with the building designs, but then in certain proffers, like the architectural design and building materials proffer, it says that you will not be coming back, and instead that it would just be submitted to the zoning administrator for review and comment, and if necessary, Reston Association DRB. So
Yeah,
what's
no, let me clarify that. That's not what that means. What we're meaning to do, Michelle, is have a set of proffers that will govern the property, right? So that the proffers don't necessarily have to change then when the new application comes in. I do see how you're looking at that and thinking that I'm saying different things. And honestly, until you just said that, it hadn't occurred to me that the way we have framed that could leave that impression. So we'll make sure that that is clear. But I can say emphatically, we intend to come back. We must come back. I will say emphatically through the process. We will have to amend our development plan and our PRC plan with a building design for each of these blocks. And what the purpose of writing the proffer the way it is today is to say that when we come back, we will provide, we will go forward from that set of from that approval. The proffer will require the submission of the further details of the architecture that comes from that approval back through the process. And I don't have I will make sure I pay very close attention to how that's worded and work with you to make sure that is clear. But it definitely, I can say this with absolute certainty, we will come back through the process. We will come to P&Z. We will go to the Reston Association DRB again when the buildings are coming in for these blocks. And again, what those proffers are meant to do is provide some certainty and understanding now about what everybody can expect those later applications are going to be and what they're going to be then, going forward. So again, as you know, zoning level plan images of architecture and building design get advanced into, final building design as well. And so the references that you're picking up in that proffer are meaning to take the future plan for, again, my example, block 4, and advancing it to that next stage of final building design.
I think the proffers probably will need to be amended, if that's the case, because it's not just this one. It's in multiple places where, it's also the sentence before the one I read, where it says that, that the applicant reserves the right to adjust the grade and finished floor level of each building without requiring amendment to the application or later applications. And again, this, I don't want to get into the weeds on this specific one, but language similar to that is throughout the proffers of not reserving the right to make amendments without having to come back.
Okay.
So,
and again, so it's an initial draft of the proffers, and you may be aware too that, it's unusual to even submit an initial draft of the proffers with an initial plan. And we are changing a plan that has been on record since 2017. We wanted to be as in front of this as we possibly could with those proffers. They're gonna change. You said you think they might need to change. I have every expectation they're gonna change before they're, finalized and ready to go to the Board of Supervisors. And whatever we need to do to make it clear that that building design will come back through this process, I'll be happy to say in the proffers. And again, what you're picking up is the next step. Like once there is a building design approved through the plan amendment for, again, picking on block 4, then the next step that follows is that building design is advanced toward building permit in accordance with that proffer. But again, we'll make sure it's clear.
Okay, that would be appreciated. And again, it's not just specific to the one I referenced. I think that problem exists in multiple places in the draft proffer. So thank you for working on that. So I'm on another committee, the Health Systems Agency of Northern Virginia. And in December, ANOVA came before our agency requesting approval of a new CT machine at the ER currently in Block 2. And in the course of the application, ANOVA, made a commitment specifically to serving the Reston community. And I pushed and I said in an ER in Reston, and they said an ER in Reston, hence also why they were asking for this new CT machine. Does that commitment remain? Can we have some type of commitment from ANOVA that they are going to be serving Reston in this area here, and that I think there is some concern that some people see this process as just a means to an end for ANOVA, and that if this layout is approved and the land swap is done, then an ANOVA can sell and move out of Reston, and then we've lost access to a provider that many of us would like to maintain access to. So what can you tell us on ANOVA's commitment to Reston and specifically to operating an ER here?
Dominic, do you want to address that?
Sure. I mean, I will say, I guess I would reiterate what you probably heard from our strategy team, during the conversation at that meeting. I mean, as Tim said at the outset, I mean, this is, an important service location for us. This was the first freestanding emergency room in the country. And we're committed to providing service here, but as you know, as part of this redevelopment, it won't look the same as it currently does, as those blocks will be redeveloped over time. And the return of the CT at that location is, we'd unfortunately pulled it out and relocated it one time, and now this is restoring that service to the community. So we felt it was important to to have that service back in Reston.
So I think, Michelle, the answer is like the intention is, and I think we've said this all along, to maintain a medical care facility service presence in the site. And we have provided the space in the development tabulations and in the program to do that. And that is that present intention continues.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll probably be asking again. And so just so you know, thank you.
We will expect it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see that Jeremy and Sue have other questions, but I do want to ask a question. A couple of them. Excellent points being brought up by my peers on this committee. Thank you so much to the county and ANOVA team for presenting here. We appreciate it. A couple questions. We now have a virgin layout that hasn't been established. And when you're talking about putting in grids of streets, etc., please, can we get the spacing right for safe pedestrian and bicycle lanes on major thoroughfares? I'm not talking about every block and every side street. I'm talking about, let's be safe. Let's not have bike lanes in the travel lanes with vehicles. Let's not have bike lanes being shared by pedestrians. It's dangerous. We don't need to do it. We suffer from that in other areas of Reston. We value bike traffic. We value pedestrian use also. So please, that's one thing I just want to lay out there. You don't have to answer it, but shrinking your lot a little bit to give us extra feet to have safe, separated travel lanes for bicycles and pedestrians is incredibly important. My other question is, when everything is done years from now, what is the expectation? We have heard that the central green will be built commensurate with a block going in. For example, if the library is the first, the central green will also go in. Please tell me who will be maintaining that. That sounded to me with your presentation that Innova's development on 2, 4, and 6 blocks, your open space is the central green. Therefore, are you all paying to maintain this in perpetuity? This is very important. Thank you.
Yeah, so good question. We haven't, there's not a certain answer to the question that who will, own and how the maintenance will be addressed in perpetuity. So it is not just Innova's open space, right? It is the project's open space. What I think we can say with certainty, or at least near certainty, is that we intend that neither the county nor Innova would, be the owner of the space. And the way that we envision the ownership of the space and other opens, not just the central green, but other open space within the project, would be controlled by a owners association of this consolidated block of Reston Town Center North. And given that we're subject to the RA covenants, we see that as a cluster association, I believe it's called within RA. So there's a relationship there of kind of a layered set of ownership structure that will then provide for the opportunity to, hire the right management folks to take care of it. We, have had very initial conversations with the folks at Rest Association about whether they might want to own it and fold it into their set of resources that they take care of. They do a great job taking care of things. So there's a discussion to follow on how all those details work. And it's, again, that I don't have a more particular answer at this point in time.
Okay. Also the on one of the meetings leading up to the planning of the Central Green, Lila Gordon specifically requested that for performances, bathrooms, well, you have planned permanent bathrooms apparently, or at least a place for porta potties. Great. Electrical outlets for performers. I assume that those are being planned for this park.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and the third thing, and she may have had 4 items, but I remember one specifically, is a place for the trucks to park that deliver the equipment for the performers, and some place where they can be which is essential for a smooth operation of actual events. And Stephanie and Susan, have you thought about that?
Yes, I would imagine that that would occur in some of the on-street parking that's right there. It could be either signed for loading on events or temporary signage to keep that parking clear for those loading and unloading purposes. But there's on-street parking planned on either side, both north and south of that potential tabletop area. And so that would be easy to park there and get access up into that plaza space.
I was gonna say, Tim, if you could flip to the enlargement, that might help just point out some of the, so you see the right above the word street C is the proposed
Right, the
tabletop, and obviously north and south of that, like that could be a really convenient area, like if we had short-term or ability to reserve parking spots where they could easily unload. You know, we could also look at reinforcing some of the hardscape, like around that main plaza, you know, for little gators or others to pull up right to the restroom for supplies and things like that. Those are pretty common, you know, park design elements, along with absolutely, as you noted, like electrical outlets and lighting and other.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Tammy, one of the other things I think that may not have been addressed, but Street C from Street A to Cameron Glen, we're proposing to be private. So if we have an event, we can close that entire street, and that can be staging, unloading, can be anything we want. And so we are pushing, we haven't gotten through with staff yet, but we're pushing for that portion of Street C to be private, to allow us to close it for events and to do the tabletop.
Okay. Thank you very much. I do want to stress that you're planning for 1,000 DUs on 2, 4, and 6, maximum, plus your bonus. Plus there's going to be a library, plus there's going to be a school. So there will be library parking, there will be school parking somewhat. We never get enough either place. My point is, if you're going to have events here that are larger scale, and obviously they're not going to be like Wolf Trap where there's thousands of people driving in. But for those of us who live too far to bike or walk to this, we will be driving cars, and just on-street peripheral parking is not going to make it. So you can't solve that problem. You can't put in underground parking lots. Maybe someday if people want to come to an event, I get that. But just keep that in mind as well. Okay,
Yeah,
let's
Tammy,
go.
can I just address that real quickly, Tammy? So as we are looking at the planning of Block 5, some of the initial work, master planning, you could say, at this point, we're looking at putting the Health and Human Services building there, which will need a parking garage or structured parking.
Oh, good.
And we are looking at adding additional parking spaces. I can't remember where the calculations ended up, but somewhere, you know, around plus 50, or I think it was even more than 50. Again, we're still playing with the numbers, but additional parking for the sole purpose of having parking available for that central green for larger events. So it's in our mind, and it's something that we're looking forward to.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Eric. Sure. Yes. Excellent. All right. Let's see. Jeremy, I think you were next.
Yeah, actually, just a quick question. From when Michelle was talking, it sounded like the proffers already got distributed. I don't think I got a copy of them. Was that an email that went out to the committee?
I pulled it from the Plus system. I don't think that you guys
okay.
did. I don't
Okay.
remember if you included it, but if not, it might be worthwhile sending it out
Yeah.
to everybody.
Yeah, I didn't even think of looking on Plus. Thanks.
Yeah, and sorry I wasn't clear before. Jeremy, I was trying to say that we did submit them, so they're on the county's site.
Okay.
And I just honestly, Eric, I can't remember if we sent them around with this or not.
We
When
don't typically post the proffers, especially this early.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
County.
I meant, we didn't send them, I guess, when we sent, we can just reply
Yeah,
to the
no, we
group that
did.
we sent the package to if with a
Okay.
copy of the proffers, if you'd like them.
And I want to interrupt here and say, next time y'all come, those of us who ask for paper copies need to get them. And so keep that in mind. This was information only. You haven't been back in a while. I knew that you would be coming back after this, but next time we do need to have paper copies for those persons who requested them. Thank you. Okay, Jeremy,
That
that
was-
was it for
Yep,
you?
that was it. Yep,
Okay,
thank you.
and
We'll do, Tammy, and thank you for accommodating our
well, we were
I'll be
so
honest,
anxious to have you. We've been trying to get you for months, and so I was like, no, we're not gonna cancel.
Our
this
2017
again, so.
presentation was a long time ago. But
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
You know,
Okay.
seriously though, thank you for accommodating us. We'll be on top of that next time.
Okay, and Sue, and then I'd like to have John Carter if he has anything to say. Sue?
Okay. To echo other PNC members, it's great that you're using community input for designing and programming the park, and especially striving for LEED's Gold certification for the buildings. This is an upfront cost, a higher cost, but it is a lower cost in the long range maintenance wise. And I do have a concern with all the uses and the additions of the school site, the athletic field, new housing. This means big changes in the topography, the soil, the stormwater. The Reston North parcels drain to the west and the northwest. So my comments address best management practices regarding stormwater management. In your notes, you said that PFM requirements will be met or exceeded, although I did hear you say in reference to each of the parcels that they would be meeting minimum standards. I tried to look at the C14 page, but I couldn't upload it. The Public Works kept kicking me off. So, and I realized that at the time of PRC plan applications, that's when all the details, the stormwater management, et cetera, will be engineered. But I'd like to know how stormwater detention containment is engineered for this Reston Town Center North redevelopment is critical. There's large neighborhoods located both west and north of these parcels that could be negatively impacted by stormwater runoff and erosion. Do you have a map? I'd like to explain, and do you have a bigger map of surrounding neighborhoods like over to Fairfax County Parkway or up to Autumnwood Park? Is there anything that you could put on the screen?
I don't know, but while I'm thinking about that, I mean, I guess I could find Google Earth. Is Pete, are you on the line? Could you address the stormwater?
And
yeah,
Tim,
I'm
I'll
here.
just note on page, and either Susan and I could pull it up. There is a sheet in the actual application that page L-2.10 that has a larger aerial, but I'm happy to share my screen if that would be helpful.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, that was L 2.10.
Go ahead, Stephanie. Thanks for having that.
Okay.
Yes, give me just 1 second. Let me share my screen. I've got 2 screens up, so I just want to make sure I have right screen. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Here, does this get out broad enough to, it may not go as far
Can you
north
go,
as you.
yes, if you could go farther north, not so much south, but north, west
yeah,
and north of the parcel. A little farther north.
We might need to open
Okay.
Google Earth then. Give me
Yeah, I'm
just
working on
1
it.
second.
That's fine. I think what you have up is sufficient. So again, all of these parcels drain to the west and to the northwest. And there's a detention pond across from Weston Town Center north at Edgewater Pond Drive, where townhouses border the pond along Lakeshore Crest Drive. And the current stormwater level, you know, as of a few days ago, was halfway up this detention pond's culvert, and as high as a homeowner, I would think, would want to see water rise on their grassy backyard slopes. If I understand correctly, some stormwater from Edgewater Detention Pond, which serves in part as a detention for your redevelopment parcels, some of the stormwater from that pond flows west along the south side of Baron Cameron Road and exits into Sugarland Run in Herndon. But stormwater also flows under Baron Cameron Street via pipes and empties into Baron Cameron Pond, which is open space for Avalon Apartments and Waterside Apartments. And these are large housing complexes across from Trader Joe's. I walked these areas recently, and the water in Baron Cameron Pond has risen to the bottom of the fishing dock. It is open space. When these apartments were built, the pond was declared open space for enjoyment. And just beyond Baron Cameron Pond to the north is a culvert and an electric station, and stormwater is more than halfway up this culvert. Single-family houses on cul-de-sacs nearby, that would be Cedar Hollow Way, Moss Point Lane, Gray Squirrel Lane, are located in a riparian buffer, which is a potential flood area of the Fairfax storm drain easement. So Baron Cameron Pond discharges north, and the stormwater flows into a ditch along Fairfax County Parkway through this riparian flood zone area and ultimately empties into the Autumnwood Park Fairfax Stormwater Management Area to the north. Now, for P&Z members who reviewed Armstrong Elementary School renovation a year ago, you'll probably recall that Armstrong Elementary drains southerly to the same location. So it's sort of a big bowl in Autumnwood Park. About a decade or more ago, it used to be a soccer and a rugby field, but it flooded so much it was unusable, and now it is Fairfax County Stormwater Management Area. And it's become a beaver pond, which is a good thing. But it doesn't remediate the fact that flooding occurs along this whole way, this western and northwestern way, in homeowners' yards. And the point of my discussion and description is that existing housing and neighbors to the west and the north, many which are downhill, could be negatively impacted by any additional stormwater runoff or erosion. So it's important to control the runoff downhill on the streets, both Town Center Parkway and Bennington Woods Road, and also to control the ponds and prevent flooding for homeowners. And so I would ask that all Reston Town Center North engineering plans commit to containing all stormwater runoff and erosion on site. That would be on site for both new and redevelopment parcels at Reston Town Center North. And this, you know, Inova County redevelopment really should be a model for best management practices for stormwater containment, on-site underground vaults being used, conservation landscaping being used, green roofs being used, working with SWCD and VCAP in the county, working as much as possible with bioretention and biophilic practices. And I think that's getting back to Lynn's comment very early on about her concern that, you know, it wasn't defined what these parcels were going to be. And so there didn't seem to be a coordination in the plan. But stormwater management takes coordination and you know, a real close look at this whole area and how it's going to be impacted by all of the changes in topography and soil moved and stormwater. So I don't really have a question. I guess I'm just wondering if your civil team or your land design team might have any feedback on that. I just want for the record that I'm concerned about stormwater management.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing your concerns. Obviously, I think an issue that we're very well aware of is a sensitive issue in the area and everywhere, for that matter. Pete, if you're there and want to describe kind of how we have preliminarily engineered, stormwater so far, we can kind of go from there. I think that a couple of things you said, I just want to make sure expectations are set. I think if I heard you right, you said that if we were able to keep all the stormwater on the site, I don't know how that happens. I mean, the stormwater has to leave the site at some point. We are not confident that we have soils that will perk. And we are definitely committed to providing best management practices and low impact development features where we can, and green roofs one day when there are buildings designed, and the bioretention components in the streetscape, and all of those features. But I want to be cautious at the outset here to make sure that we're able to set kind of reasonable expectations for what we can't do or what we can do.
Well, I think one of the major ways is underground vaults. I know the most recent development south of Reston Town Center, they are using underground vaults. They're using a variety of conservation landscaping and bioretention. They are using a detention pond, but it is a detention pond that has much more space for accommodating off-site stormwater runoff. The areas that I'm describing to you now are not in a position to handle significantly more detention water. And I would like to point out that Baron Cameron Pond is open space. This is not simply a detention pond. It is open space and meant as enjoyment for the apartment dwellers there. And well, yeah. I wish William Pegues was here. I think he could, also help to round out the conversation that I am attempting. But I think there are ways to contain most of the stormwater on site. And again, that takes some coordination between the parcels, and especially takes coordination as you are, creating the roads, et cetera, for these parcels. I think that's a major one. But, I mean, there's everything from using core logs and bioswales, and you've got to keep the erosion on site, and it's very, very important to find ways to contain on site.
Pete, do you want to jump in just for a minute and kind of give a high level here on where we're at?
Sure. So just to sort of take a mini step back, the ponds that were described were originally designed and constructed to provide both stormwater management and BMP for the area. When they were originally designed, BMP environment. However, the volume of the wet pond provides a water element when there's a flooding.
I'm sorry, Peter. I'm sorry. This is Linwell. I can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it is garbled on my side as well.
Is it better now? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank you.
Is that better? Sorry. I had a Bluetooth earbud in, and maybe that was just a bad connection.
Yeah.
So I'll start over. So the ponds that, yep, sure. The ponds to the west and to the north, yeah. So when they were originally built, they were designed and constructed for water quantity. And indirectly, they provide water quality. And when they were first designed, the water quality requirement wasn't in existence, but there is, there's an law and a provide a water quality benefit to the area. Said, this site is not using site ponds for water quality benefit. Okay, so all water quality requirements are going to be met on site, even though those ponds, in fact, do provide some water quality element, right? We're just not taking credit for them. In addition, we are using the ponds. The ponds are there. They provide an element of detention, but they don't meet all of the detention requirements, right? So on the plan, we do have underground stormwater management vaults shown within the roadway and streetscape areas in order to detain the runoff from the roads in the central green. Okay. And with the intent that when each block comes in, there will likely be stormwater management vaults likely within each of the blocks to handle the requirement on a block by block basis. Okay. We also show urban bioretention along the streetscape. So where we can right now, the plan just show the road and streetscape. And so in the streetscape, we have urban bioretention so that that 1 year event, which is more common than your 100-year event, right? That's the one that comes more frequently. That event gets taken care of much more in those urban bioretention. So we have a combination again of vaults, urban bioretention, and also underground manufactured filtering devices that will meet the stormwater management, water quality, and quantity requirements for the site. So I don't know if that answered all your questions, but that's an overview
Well,
of
I'm
what we
certainly
currently
concerned
show.
about water. I'm certainly concerned about water quality, but I'm talking more about flooding and especially all of these neighborhoods that are downhill from there. And just running down the street, you know, the Bennington Wood Street, Town Center Parkway Street, there's a significant amount of water. Do you have a percentage of how much water will be detained or contained by underground vaults? You mentioned that. And how much, what percentage will be considered by you to run off the properties? What is acceptable to you?
Yeah, so it's not really what's acceptable to me. It's code requirements that we'll need to meet. And so the ponds are designed for a certain land cover, right? Which is made up of a percentage of impervious and non-impervious areas. And so once this, if this site exceeds what those ponds are designed for, then there needs to be on-site detention that mitigates that added impervious area. So right now there are vaults, right now the plan, okay, is demolishing parts of the site and putting in roads. So we're really actually decreasing the amount of impervious area. Now we know that's a temporary condition, right? Eventually there will be blocks that come in. And again, when those blocks come in, there will be additional detention facilities provided on those blocks in order to mitigate those sites. So while I can't say we're going to fix whatever's going on today, right? We can't fix things that we can't control. There's a huge drainage area that's going to that pond and we are a part of it. We will be mitigating the runoff from our site, right? And so we won't be a detriment to the downstream properties, but we can't say we're going to fix all of the issues on the downstream properties either, right?
No, I was talking about adding to what is downstream now.
Let's make sure we're talking about the same thing too, right? Because I hear Pete talking about we are detaining, right? And we do, and treating. Okay, so and we've moved from quality measures to quantity measures, and quality is of course important as well. But on the quantity side, right? We are detaining in underground vaults and holding the water by a certain metric, right, that meets or exceeds the requirements. But at some point, that water does have to leave the site, right, Pete? I mean, some water may never leave the site because we're able to get it to infiltrate. But I'm afraid we're talking about two different things here, because it sounds like, Sue, you're saying, you know, you want the water to be detained, and there's vaults on other places that detain water, but the water doesn't just sit in a vault forever until it's gone. It has to be released at some point, right? And so what we're planning to do is detain the water so that it is held back in a storm event, and to do our part for our site to hold on to that water and release it at a rate that doesn't exacerbate the condition downstream. Is that, Pete, a fair way to say that?
Yes.
Right. I understand that. I was just talking about using the underground vaults as a major way of storing water and then having it released slowly. But then
Right.
as it's released, it also can be contained through bioretention and many other green methods. And so I would like to see modeled here for the county, especially since you have, you know, the county has a Northern Virginia SWCD office, and, you know, they promote conservation, landscaping, and stormwater management, and you work together, you know, your offices work together. It'd be great to do, you know, a model project here, especially because downstream is suffering from a lot of flooding. And, you know, Fairfax County had to redo the Autumnwood stormwater management twice now. And it's been a big problem. And so I'm very concerned about stormwater management on these parcels.
Thank you, Sue. Thank
Yeah,
you for
appreciate
bringing this up.
appreciate the comments, and we you won't be alone, we're sure, and we are focused on that as something we need to address adequately.
Okay. John Carter, do you have anything?
I do. I have a couple things. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay. I would suggest for everybody's that you look at the streets in front of the library. In fact, I would suggest take a look at I know the library is evolving. Take a look at the building of the library to make sure you have the street in the right spot. Because I think the library shows it one way, and I don't know if you're showing it the same way. And then that tabletop, does it match the right part of the library? Same thing on the south side. You know, it has that little wave in there. But I think both for the community benefits, but primarily for your benefit, make sure that's all coordinated. And hopefully, the way these things are going, I think the library and the park will catch up pretty quickly. And maybe we can look at those two blocks together. The other blocks are a little more unknown. The other aspect of that, it's time to pull out the urban design guidelines. And I notice your streets are wider than the design guidelines are. I don't know what you want to change, whether change yours or change the design guidelines. But since the county is sort of at least a silent partner, we probably ought to fix that. And then I would look at Library Street. Maybe that should be something a little different than the other streets. Double row of trees, single row of shade trees with ornamental trees. I don't know, bikeways along there. But I think maybe an opportunity to do something with that. And then as we drill down, the design guidelines have intersections, the way they're supposed to be designed with the crosswalks in the right spot, with streetlights, time to start thinking about streetlights and the tree spacing and all those detail things. But anyway, it's the finalizing the shape of the block. I'm not talking about major changes, but just another check to make sure this is going all right and it's in sync with what others are doing. And then don't forget the details of Library Street and maybe the other
streets as well. But pull out those design guidelines and see if those make sense. Okay.
And just, John, just to confirm, it's the Reston TSA,
Yes.
the urban design guide. Okay, I just want to make
Right.
sure the right document.
Right,
Okay,
right.
good.
And I think you
Yeah,
kind
we-
of put the two blocks together, the library and the park. I think there's enough design work on the library now that you could at least see if it's going to work. There's been a lot of movement of that street from time to time. So,
John,
okay.
just to assure you, we have the same civil engineer and we're using the same background. So they have
Yeah.
been coordinated so far.
But then it's the building entrance, and does that match up with the tabletop and those things?
Right.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? All righty. Thank you, County. Thank you, Inova, for your fabulous answers and work on this. We really look forward to the next step. Hopefully it won't be another 15 years. And thank you. You all can check off if you want.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time, and we'll look forward to reporting back as we proceed. We appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
y'all.
good night.
Good night. Good night.